On a quiet rural road under the scorching sun, something unbelievable happened. A massive bull suddenly blocked the traffic, not to attack, but in desperation. In his eyes, a silent cry for help. "Please save my calf." This is the emotional story of a baby bull fighting for life, and a father's desperate mission to rescue his child. Before we continue this emotional story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps us share more rescues like this with the world. The morning sun blazed mercilessly over the endless plains of central Texas, where Highway 287 stretched like a ribbon of asphalt through cattle country that had remained virtually unchanged for generations. This particular stretch of road, 30 miles outside Amarillo, was known primarily to local ranchers and the occasional trucker hauling livestock between processing plants and feedlots scattered across the Panhandle's vast agricultural landscape. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had driven this route countless times during her 15-year career as a large animal veterinarian, her mobile clinic truck equipped with everything necessary to provide emergency medical care to cattle, horses, and other livestock across 4 counties. At 42, she possessed the weathered hands and sun-damaged skin of someone who had spent decades working outdoors in Texas heat, but her eyes still held the compassion that had driven her to dedicate her life to healing animals that couldn't speak for themselves. This Tuesday morning began like any other, as Elena drove toward the Silverton Ranch to check on a pregnant mare that had been showing signs of complications. The radio played classic country music while she reviewed her mental checklist of supplies and procedures, anticipating a routine call that would probably be resolved within an hour or two. But as she crested a small hill approximately 15 miles from her destination, Elena encountered a sight that would haunt her dreams and inspire her actions for years to come. Standing directly in the center of the highway's northbound lane was an enormous black Angus bull, his massive frame silhouetted against the morning sky like a monument to desperation and determination. The bull made no aggressive movements as Elena's truck approached, showing none of the territorial behavior that typically characterized his species when confronted by humans or vehicles. Instead, he stood motionless except for his eyes, which tracked her approach with an intelligence and urgency that seemed to communicate something far more complex than simple animal instinct. Tell us in the comments. What city are you watching from? Have you ever witnessed an animal doing something that seemed impossible to believe? Elena slowed her veterinary truck to a complete stop, her professional instincts warring with common sense as she assessed the unprecedented situation unfolding before her eyes. In 15 years of treating livestock emergencies, she had never encountered behavior like this. A 2,000-pound bull deliberately positioning himself to intercept human traffic, his body language suggesting plea rather than threat. The massive Angus bull's eyes held something that transcended typical bovine consciousness. Elena recognized the expression from countless emergency calls where animals exhibited behaviors that defied scientific explanation when their offspring were in mortal danger. This wasn't random wandering or territorial aggression. This was purposeful communication from a creature desperate to bridge the species gap. As Elena stepped carefully from her truck, keeping her movement slow and non-threatening, the bull's response confirmed her growing suspicion that this encounter was anything but coincidental. Instead of charging or retreating, he took several deliberate steps toward her vehicle, then stopped and looked back over his massive shoulder toward a grove of mesquite trees approximately 200 yards from the highway. The pattern repeated 3 times: approach, pause, look toward the trees, return to the road's center. Elena had witnessed similar behavior in domestic animals trying to lead humans to injured pack members, but never in cattle, a species not known for such sophisticated problem-solving or interspecies communication. "What are you trying to tell me, big guy?" Elena whispered, her veterinary training overriding the fear that any rational person should feel when standing 10 feet from an agitated bull. She reached into her truck for a tranquilizer gun, not to subdue the animal, but as insurance against the unpredictable dangers that came with following unknown emergency situations. The bull's reaction to her movement toward the trees was immediate and unmistakable. He moved off the highway and began walking purposefully toward the mesquite grove, pausing frequently to ensure Elena was following. His gait carried none of the random wandering typical of escaped livestock. Every step seemed calculated to maintain communication with the human he had somehow identified as potential help. As they approached the tree line, Elena heard what the bull had been trying to communicate: the weak, distressed calls of a young calf in obvious pain. Hidden among the thorny branches was a scene that explained everything. A newborn bull calf, probably less than a week old, trapped in a tangle of barbed wire that had become increasingly embedded in his flesh as he struggled to free himself. The father had been unable to help his offspring alone, but possessed the intelligence to recognize that humans had capabilities he lacked. His desperate gamble of stopping traffic had been a calculated attempt to recruit assistance for a rescue that required opposable thumbs and wire cutters. Elena's initial assessment of the trapped calf revealed a nightmare scenario that challenged both her medical expertise and her willingness to risk her own safety for an animal rescue that could easily turn deadly. The barbed wire had created multiple deep lacerations across the young bull's legs and torso, while his panicked struggles had only made the entanglement worse, embedding metal barbs deeper into tissue that was already showing signs of severe infection. The father bull's protective instincts created an additional layer of danger as he paced anxiously near his trapped offspring, his massive frame radiating tension that could explode into violence if he perceived any threat to his calf. Elena understood that one wrong move, one sudden motion that the father interpreted as aggression, could result in a 2,000-pound charge that would crush her before she could reach safety. "This is insane," Elena muttered to herself as she surveyed the complex rescue operation that would require her to work within striking distance of an agitated bull while performing delicate surgical procedures on a frightened, pain-maddened calf. Every protocol in her veterinary training emphasized the importance of controlled environments and proper restraint equipment for large animal procedures. Her mobile clinic contained tranquilizer doses sufficient to sedate the calf, but nothing powerful enough to safely immobilize an adult bull of this size. The nearest backup was Dr. Martinez in Amarillo, at least 40 minutes away even with emergency driving, while the trapped calf's condition appeared to be deteriorating rapidly from blood loss and shock. Elena's phone call to animal control resulted in a response that deepened her frustration. "Ma'am, we don't have equipment for handling situations like this. You need to contact the sheriff's department and request assistance from their emergency response team, but I should warn you that their policy for dangerous livestock usually involves firearms rather than rescue attempts." The implications of official intervention horrified Elena as she realized that bureaucratic procedures would likely result in both animals being destroyed as public safety hazards. The intelligent father who had risked everything to find help for his offspring would be rewarded with bullets, while the innocent calf would die anyway, either from his injuries or from human unwillingness to attempt dangerous rescues. Standing in the Texas heat, watching the father bull's desperate vigil over his suffering child, Elena faced a decision that would define her both professionally and personally. She could follow proper protocols and watch two animals die, or she could risk her career, her safety, and possibly her life attempting a rescue that had no guarantee of success and enormous potential for catastrophic failure. The calf's weakening cries seemed to echo across the endless prairie, a sound that spoke to something deeper than professional obligation or rational risk assessment. It spoke to the fundamental choice between courage and comfort that defines who we become when faced with suffering we have the power to address. The wisdom that would guide Elena through the impossible rescue came from an unexpected source when her satellite phone rang with a call from Dr. James Whitehorse, a legendary large animal veterinarian whose career had spanned 5 decades and included rescues that had become folklore throughout Texas ranching communities. At 78, he was semi-retired, but still maintained an informal network of younger veterinarians who consulted him during crisis situations. "Elena, I heard about your situation through the emergency dispatch network," Dr. Whitehorse said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had faced every conceivable livestock emergency. "I'm 20 minutes from your location, but more importantly, I've dealt with protective bulls in rescue situations before. Don't do anything until I get there. Doctor." Whitehorse arrived in a modified pickup truck that looked like a mobile surgical unit, equipped with specialized restraint devices and sedation equipment that Elena's clinic lacked. But it was his approach to the father bull that revealed the decades of experience that made him legendary. He moved with slow confidence that communicated respect rather than fear. "This bull's behavior is extraordinary, Doctor," Whitehorse observed as he studied the father's protective positioning near his trapped calf. "In 50 years of practice, I've seen maybe 3 cases of cattle deliberately seeking human help for offspring, The intelligence required for this behavior suggests cognitive abilities we're only beginning to understand. The mentor's most valuable contribution was his understanding of bovine psychology and the communication techniques that could transform a dangerous adversary into a cooperative partner. Dr. Whitehorse demonstrated how specific body language and vocal patterns could signal non-threatening intentions to agitated livestock. The key is earning his trust rather than overpowering his instincts, Dr. Tsaikyai Whitehorse explained as he slowly approached the father bull with feed pellets and calm vocalizations. This animal has already demonstrated problem-solving skills by recruiting human help. Now we need to prove that his faith in our species was justified. Within 30 minutes, Dr. Whitehorse had established enough rapport with the father bull to begin working near the trapped calf. The massive animal remained alert and protective, but no longer viewed the humans as immediate threats to his offspring's safety. "Your instincts were right about attempting this rescue," Dr. Whitehorse told Elena as they prepared their surgical instruments. "Sometimes veterinary medicine requires us to take calculated risks that textbooks don't cover. The question isn't whether this rescue is dangerous. It's whether we can live with ourselves if we don't try." The mentor's final gift was perspective that transformed Elena's fear into focused determination. "This father bull trusted you enough to ask for help," he said. "Now let's prove that his faith wasn't misplaced." The moment of commitment came when Elena knelt beside the trapped calf while his 2,000-pound father stood guard just 6 feet away, every muscle in the massive bull's frame coiled with protective tension that could explode into lethal violence at any perceived threat to his offspring. This was the point of no return. Once she began cutting away the barbed wire, there would be no safe retreat if the situation deteriorated. Dr. Whitehorse positioned himself strategically between Elena and the father bull, using his decades of experience to maintain the delicate communication that kept the rescue operation from becoming a disaster. His calm presence seemed to reassure the agitated parent that the humans were trying to help rather than harm his calf. "Start with the wire around his front legs," Dr. Whitehorse instructed quietly. "Work slowly and talk to both of them constantly. The father needs to hear your voice so he can distinguish between rescue sounds and pain sounds from his calf." Elena's first cut through the embedded barbed wire triggered a reaction that tested everyone's nerves as the trapped calf bellowed in pain and tried to thrash free, causing his wounds to bleed more heavily. The father bull's immediate response was a threatening snort and a half-step forward that brought his massive head within striking distance of Elena's position. "Easy, big guy," Elena whispered, her voice somehow remaining steady despite her racing heart. "I know this hurts him, but we're trying to save his life. Please trust us a little longer." The breakthrough moment came when the father bull seemed to understand the connection between temporary pain and ultimate freedom. As Elena worked methodically to free each entangled limb, the massive animal began to relax slightly, his protective stance softening into something approaching cooperation. Each section of wire that Elena removed brought both relief and increased danger, as the calf's movements became more vigorous while his father's anxiety peaked during the most delicate procedures. The young bull's blood loss was significant, requiring immediate medical intervention once the mechanical rescue was complete. "We're past the point where this could be routine," Dr. Whitehorse observed as Elena administered emergency antibiotics and fluid replacement therapy while working within touching distance of a bull who could kill her with a single movement. This calf's survival now depends on medical expertise and his father's continued trust in human intentions. The crossing of the threshold was complete when Elena realized that success required more than veterinary skills. It demanded faith in the intelligence and emotional capacity of animals whose consciousness she was only beginning to understand. Have you ever had to trust someone completely when you had no choice but to believe they would protect you? Tell us about that moment of faith. The rescue operation's complexity multiplied when Sheriff Deputy Marcus Johnson arrived with backup officers and standard protocols for handling dangerous livestock situations. His assessment of Elena and Dr. Whitehorse working within striking distance of an agitated bull triggered administrative procedures that threatened to terminate the rescue before it could be completed. "Ma'am, you need to step away from that animal immediately," Deputy Johnson announced with the authority of someone who had never dealt with livestock emergencies beyond shooting problematic animals. "We've got authorization to neutralize the threat and secure the scene." Dr. Whitehorse intervened with the diplomatic skills that had made him legendary throughout Texas ranching communities. "Deputy, this bull stopped traffic specifically to ask for human help saving his calf. Destroying him now would be equivalent to executing someone who called 911 for emergency assistance." The tension escalated when Elena's attempts to suture the calf's deepest lacerations triggered defensive responses from the father bull, whose protective instincts intensified as strangers with weapons approached his vulnerable offspring. The massive animal's agitation created exactly the dangerous scenario that law enforcement protocols were designed to prevent. Unexpected support came from Maria Santos, a local rancher who had witnessed the bull's highway behavior and followed the emergency vehicles to offer assistance. Her 40 years of cattle experience provided credibility that convinced Deputy Johnson to allow the rescue to continue under careful supervision. "That bull's showing more intelligence than most people give cattle credit for," Santos testified to the gathering crowd of officials and curiosity seekers. "If those vets can save his calf, it proves these animals are capable of complex reasoning and emotional bonds we've never acknowledged." The most dangerous moment came when the freed calf attempted to stand on injured legs, triggering protective fury from his father as the young bull's pain cries filled the air. Elena found herself caught between a medical emergency requiring immediate intervention and a father bull whose instincts demanded that all potential threats be eliminated. Whitehorse's expertise proved crucial as he used vocal commands and body positioning to redirect the father's protective energy into cooperation rather than aggression. The delicate balance between helping the calf and maintaining the father's trust required constant communication and perfect timing. The crisis deepened as Elena's medical examination revealed complications that transformed a challenging rescue into a potential tragedy. The calf's blood loss was more severe than initially apparent, while signs of systemic infection suggested that barbed wire had introduced bacteria into wounds that had been festering for days before the father bull's desperate highway intervention. "We're looking at septic shock," Elena announced grimly as she monitored the young bull's vital signs. "His temperature is spiking, and his blood pressure is dropping fast. Without immediate intensive care, he's going to die despite everything we've done to free him." The mobile veterinary clinic lacked the advanced life support equipment necessary for treating severe sepsis in large animals. The nearest facility equipped for such emergencies was the Texas A&M Veterinary Hospital in College Station, more than 4 hours away by emergency transport that the critically injured calf might not survive. Dr. Whitehorse faced the agonizing decision of recommending euthanasia to prevent further suffering, while Elena struggled with the possibility that their heroic rescue efforts had merely prolonged the calf's pain rather than saving his life. The father bull seemed to sense the gravity of his offspring's condition, his protective stance becoming more desperate as medical equipment documented his calf's deteriorating status. "We can't give up now," Elena declared with determination that surprised even herself. "This father risked everything to get help for his calf. We owe it to both of them to try every possible intervention before we consider ending this fight." The approach to the critical moment required Elena to attempt emergency procedures that pushed her veterinary training to its absolute limits. Using equipment designed for routine farm calls, she would need to establish intravenous access, administer massive doses of antibiotics, and somehow stabilize a patient whose size and species made conventional medical protocols nearly impossible to implement. The father bull's behavior became increasingly protective as strangers with medical equipment surrounded his weakened calf. His massive presence created a psychological barrier that Elena would need to cross in order to perform the intensive procedures that represented their last hope for saving the young animal's life. Time was running out, and every minute of delay reduced the calf's chances of survival, while increasing the risk that his father's protective instincts would explode into violence that could destroy the delicate cooperation they had worked so hard to achieve. The life-or-death moment arrived when the calf's condition crashed completely, his body temperature plummeting while his heart rate became dangerously erratic. Elena found herself performing emergency cardiac resuscitation on a 200-pound bull calf while his massive father watched every movement with eyes that seemed to understand that his offspring was dying, despite all human efforts to save him. "We're losing him." Dr. Whitehorse announced as the calf's vital signs indicated imminent cardiac arrest. "Elena, we've done everything possible," Sometimes the kindest thing is knowing when to let go. But as the young bull's breathing became shallow and irregular, something extraordinary happened that defied every assumption about animal consciousness and emotional intelligence. The father bull approached his dying calf and began making soft vocalizations that seemed designed to comfort rather than protect, his massive head gently nuzzling his offspring with tenderness that spoke to bonds deeper than instinct. Elena refused to surrender, even as medical indicators suggested the battle was lost. Working with equipment pushed beyond its intended limits, she administered experimental drug combinations, while Dr. Whitehorse maintained artificial respiration using techniques adapted from equine emergency medicine. The ordeal reached its climax when the calf flatlined completely, his heart stopping for nearly 3 minutes, while Elena performed chest compressions that seemed futile against the young bull's massive ribcage. The father's response to his calf's apparent death was heartbreaking, a mournful bellow that carried across the Texas plains like a funeral song. But Elena's desperate efforts to restart the calf's heart finally succeeded when a combination of adrenaline injections and manual cardiac massage restored a weak but steady pulse. The moment when the young bull's eyes opened and focused on his father's face created an emotional crescendo that left everyone present struggling with tears. The father bull's reaction to his calf's resurrection was immediate and profound. Gentle nuzzling and protective positioning that demonstrated relief and gratitude beyond anything typically attributed to bovine consciousness. The bond between father and offspring had survived the ultimate test, proving that love transcends species boundaries in ways that science was only beginning to understand. Elena's successful navigation of the medical crisis marked her transformation from competent veterinarian to someone who had witnessed the extraordinary intelligence and emotional depth that existed in creatures most humans dismissed as mere livestock. The calf's miraculous recovery became a testament to the power of refusing to surrender when faced with impossible circumstances. Within hours of his cardiac arrest, the young bull was standing on shaky legs while his father maintained a protective vigil that demonstrated patience and intelligence that challenged every assumption about bovine consciousness. Elena's successful rescue attracted international attention as news outlets discovered the unprecedented story of a bull who had literally stopped traffic to beg for human help saving his offspring. The footage captured by Deputy Johnson's body camera became viral content that sparked global discussions about animal intelligence and emotional capacity. Dr. Whitehorse documented the case for veterinary journals, emphasizing the sophisticated problem-solving behavior that the father bull had displayed in recognizing that humans possessed capabilities he lacked. This rescue demonstrates cognitive abilities in cattle that science has never adequately studied or acknowledged, he wrote. The reward extended beyond medical success as Elena discovered that her willingness to risk everything for animal welfare had revealed capabilities she hadn't known she possessed. The veterinarian who had once followed standard protocols had evolved into someone who could achieve the impossible through compassion and determination. Most significantly, the father bull's behavior had proven that consciousness, love, and sacrifice existed throughout the animal kingdom in forms that demanded moral consideration and legal protection. His desperate gamble to save his calf had opened human eyes to intelligence that had always existed but had never been recognized. The young bull's recovery provided living proof that faith and persistence could overcome medical impossibilities when guided by genuine compassion. The pair of bulls who had been strangers to Elena just days earlier had become symbols of hope for animal welfare advocates worldwide. Elena's transformation from routine veterinarian to pioneer of interspecies communication was complete when she realized that the father bull had chosen her specifically, somehow recognizing qualities that would make her willing to attempt the impossible rescue when others might have walked away. Fame brought unexpected challenges as Elena's rescue story attracted attention from media outlets, animal rights organizations, and commercial interests seeking to exploit her relationship with the bulls for profit rather than genuine animal welfare. The peaceful Texas ranch where father and calf had been relocated became a destination for journalists and documentary crews who disrupted the quiet environment essential for their continued recovery. Elena struggled to balance public interest in their story with the bull's need for privacy and routine. The father bull, now known internationally as Hero, showed signs of stress from constant human attention, becoming protective in ways that reminded everyone that despite his gentle rescue behavior, he remained a powerful animal capable of dangerous reactions when feeling threatened. The situation complicated when Hollywood producers offered substantial sums for movie rights, arguing that their story deserved widespread recognition that could inspire animal welfare reform globally. However, Elena worried that commercial exploitation might trivialize the authentic emotions and life-or-death struggles that had defined their relationship. Legal complications emerged when the original ranch owner attempted to reclaim the bulls, arguing that veterinary care didn't constitute legal ownership transfer. The case threatened to separate Elena from the animals whose trust she had earned through extraordinary circumstances that conventional law couldn't adequately address. Most seriously, Elena faced professional criticism from colleagues who argued that her emotional attachment to individual animals compromised the objectivity necessary for sound veterinary practice. Traditional agricultural veterinarians worried that her story would create unrealistic expectations about livestock intelligence and welfare that could complicate standard farming operations. The challenge became protecting the genuine bond she had formed with Hero and his calf, while preventing their story from being corrupted by commercial interests or bureaucratic procedures that viewed them as property rather than sentient beings deserving of continued care and respect. The turning point came when Hero's behavior during a university research visit provided scientific evidence that revolutionized understanding of bovine intelligence. Dr. Sarah Chen's research team documented Hero's ability to recognize Elena's voice from hundreds of yards away, demonstrate problem-solving skills that exceeded documented capabilities for his species, and display emotional responses that challenged fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness. This bull's cognitive abilities suggest intelligence levels comparable to dolphins or elephants, Dr. Chen announced during her groundbreaking presentation. His deliberate recruitment of human help represents strategic thinking that redefines our understanding of cattle consciousness. Legal victory arrived when Texas courts ruled that Hero's demonstrated intelligence qualified him for protection under expanded animal welfare statutes. The precedent-setting decision recognized that extraordinary circumstances could create bonds between humans and animals that transcended traditional property relationships. Elena's vindication was complete when the American Veterinary Medical Association honored her rescue with their highest award for exceptional service, validating her decision to risk everything for animals most professionals viewed as mere livestock. Her methods became required study material for veterinary students, learning about interspecies communication and emergency animal psychology. Most importantly, Hero's story had inspired legislation protecting intelligent animals from exploitation while advancing ethical research practices that honored their cognitive abilities and emotional needs. 5 years later, the Texas highway where Hero once made his desperate stand bore a historical marker commemorating the moment that changed human understanding of animal intelligence forever. Elena's ranch had become the Hero Foundation, a sanctuary where rescued animals demonstrated cognitive abilities that revolutionized scientific thinking about consciousness across species. Hero himself, now a magnificent 8-year-old bull, served as ambassador for animal intelligence research while maintaining the gentle dignity that had made his rescue possible. His son, Miracle, had grown into a remarkable young bull whose inherited intelligence proved that Hero's exceptional qualities were genetic rather than coincidental. Elena's transformation from routine veterinarian to internationally recognized pioneer was complete. Her communication techniques with traumatized animals had been adopted worldwide, while her bovine intelligence research opened new fields challenging assumptions about which species deserved moral protection. The foundation welcomed thousands of visitors annually who came to witness animals whose intelligence demanded recognition and respect. Hero's legacy lived through dozens of rescued creatures and legislation protecting intelligent animals from exploitation. Elena often watched Hero graze peacefully with his son, marveling how one moment of desperate parental love had transformed humanity's relationship with remarkable minds throughout the natural world, proving that courage and compassion could bridge any species barrier. Desperate, Bull stops traffic to beg for his calf's rescue.